Americans like you, and I believe he will be a great president. Strong, principled, compassionate, and pro-medicine. 2 days ago, Americans gathered on the Washington Mall to celebrate our nation's ideals. Today, you are gathered to remind our country one of those ideals is the infinite value of every life.
I'm new to Congress, but I'm not new to this cause. I'm pro-life, and I don't apologize for it. The fundamental axiom of Western civilization is the belief in the sanctity of human life. The 107th Congress must be about the business of reasserting this crucial to oppose using public funds and revenues to fund abortions domestically or abroad, as our president has initiated today. We must support an immediate ban on partial birth abortion in all 50
Monument. We got sun there. That's very good. Take your time with a movie camera. With my election note. No, you're fine. Slow down. All right, now you can go a couple of steps. It's moving again. That's beautiful. You're fine. You even have a couple of feet. You can keep going. You got 2 feet. I don't think it's lit up at night. Now that guy's a TV guy. Wow, the Capitol Town. Is that where we're going?
And the guy comes in screaming. He's like, look at oh my God.
You're kidding, of course.
Smile for the camera. Okay, as long as we get out of this. Yeah. There's Charlotte.
Eternal Father, you gave St. Vincent the courage to endure torture and death for the gospel. Fill us with your spirit and strengthen us in your love. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Blessed are you, O God, for all creation, for your goodness we are with wine to offer, fruit of wine, work of human hands, it will become for us our spiritual strength.
Blessed be God forever.
Fiery sword of truth, to strike the hearts of all those who perform the abominable and heinous sin of abortion. Strike the hearts of all those who even now are contemplating abortion. Rid themselves of the new and wonderful life you have just created, which they carry within themselves. Strike the hearts of all who condone, support, or leave untouched this horrible evil through their actions or inactions. Strike their hearts with your sword of truth, so that they may cry out to you, divine justice. That they may cry out to you from the depths of their souls for your forgiveness and mercy. When they call out from the depths of their souls, Father, forgive them of this heinous sin. Pour your immense, all-consuming love into their hearts. Welcome them back into the fold.
Lord, in the mysteries we receive, give us the spiritual courage which made your martyr, Saint Vincent, faithful in your service and victorious in his suffering. Grant this in the name of Jesus the Lord. Amen. The Lord be with you. And also with you.
Yeah, it's 20 after. I wanted to go by.
Okay, look up.
Okay.
What shall I do?
Wonderful day, Joe. I can do this again every day this week. And he's taking your picture. You're not supposed to fold. Scotty, walk down together. Like you don't know the camera's on. Come down. Come on down.
Take a picture of this priest with no shores.
Including a sentence in this bill, which is in Senator Cavanaugh's bill, that says that the surrogate has no more right to choose treatment than a competent patient would. And the whole purpose of this, the tax court said, was to weave over to a consensus in the future about when these treatments could be denied. We think that's imbalanced, Senator. And what we would propose is an amendment that would simply say that if a patient wants treatment, or family members want treatment, that in a reasonable medical judgment would be likely to save the patient's life, then the patient should be able to be transferred to another healthcare provider. And pending that transfer, the treatment should be provided so the patient can live. And Senator, what we really appreciate, and I really appreciate you're doing, is going to Senator Hammond and saying to him that you can't support the Family Healthcare Decisions Act unless an amendment that allows patients to transfer is added so that there's equal protection when families choose life.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I really have a there's a difference between passing a law that prevents someone from doing something to you, but you're asking me to force someone to do an affirmative act, and there's a difference there.
Well, Senator, I understand what you're saying, but there is a duty to provide affirmative acts when it's a special duty of care. For example, on a beach, if there are lifeguards on that beach, they have a duty to save people who are drowning. Well, in the same way, once a physician-patient relationship is established, there is a duty of care toward the patients. In fact, that's what malpractice law is all about. You can't just say, omit standard tests that all doctors would give to a patient and expect to be free of malpractice liability, because the doctor does have a duty to provide treatment to a
Well,
patient.
I understand that you're talking about malpractice standards. There is a malpractice standard that doctors shouldn't be forced to give inappropriate treatment, inappropriate medical treatment. And that is basically set by what other doctors in the field believe to be inappropriate medical treatment.
Well, Senator, in addressing that, let me give you an example. Suppose that there were to be a fire in this office building, and the firefighters were to arrive, and you were to come out and start telling them where to put their hoses. I can agree with you that since you're not a firefighter, and that's a professional firefighting judgment, they should be the ones to be able to decide what is the appropriate place to put the hose. But let me give you another example.
Let's suppose that there was a fire in this office building, and the firefighters arrived, and they said, Senator, this is an ugly office building. We're going to let it burn to the ground. And you protested. Well, I would say, Senator, the job of the firefighter is not to make decisions about which buildings should be saved and which shouldn't be saved. It's to make judgments about what firefighting techniques are most likely to save the buildings, or whether there are any that work. In the same way, a doctor's job certainly is to make judgments about what treatment is most likely to save a patient's life, but it's not to make a judgment about which lives should be saved and which should not. That should be the choice of the patient himself or herself coming down the end.
Well, I see that. But what about protecting the conscience of the doctor? What if he really thinks, really believes, that providing this medical care is unethical?
Well, Senator, that's something that the law has addressed in the opposite context. When we're talking about a situation, let's say, when a family wants to cut off fluids to a relative, and the doctor, for whatever reason, thinks that's unethical, doesn't want to start his patient death. What the law now says is, all right, the doctor doesn't have to be responsible for involvement in starvation directly, but the patient's autonomy has to be respected to the extent that the patient has to be allowed to transfer, and the doctor has to be able to facilitate that transfer and not prevent it. Well, all we're saying is exactly the same thing in this amendment, that if a doctor really thinks it's against his or her conscience to provide life-saving treatment to this patient because the patient has what the doctor thinks is poor quality of life, then at least let the patient be transferred, and it's not too much to say maintain the status quo, provide the treatment until the patient's transferred completely.
Well, all that is well and good, but we just have a limited number of resources, and you just cannot provide every medical treatment available to everyone who demands it.
I know what you're saying, Senator, and there is a debate about rationing in this country, whether it's necessary. But I don't think we should be debating the rationing in the context of this bill, and I'll tell you why. If you're going to have rationing, the last thing that you want to do is to leave it up to individual healthcare providers how ration. Let me give you the example of what happened, say, in World War II. When we had to ration butter and tires and gasoline and all sorts of other things. We didn't go out and say to each individual gas station attendant, all right, because the gas is low, you decide who of your customers is going to get gas from this. Because that would be grossly unfair. One person could get gas from one gas station but not from another, and it would just be very arbitrary. Instead, we set up a societal way of rationing. Rationing boards and coupons that we're doing. We do have to have rationing. I think that's, it's a debatable issue. The proper way to do it is to set up some fair way on a society-wide basis, not to leave it to individual doctors who are making decisions based upon their view of when the cost is worth it or not for a particular patient.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you coming in, but I've got to
Thank
get to
you.
the floor.
I appreciate that. Telling that you want to support this bill and that we have this amendment to give legal protection, we deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is help prepare for your practicing of this back and forth type of lobbying. And I'm going to do it just as I said I would, by telling you what I told you. And if you want to get out your little green sheets, let me tell you exactly what we're going to do from this point on. I'm going to go over with you, again, points 8 through 11, which are the rebuttals to arguments we may get. We've had some changes. Some people have come, some people have left. So I'm going to go ahead and for those of you who were here this morning, what we did was we counted off by threes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we will establish, each of you will be assigned one group, which will not necessarily be the same group you were in this morning. Then you'll go to a particular location for that group. We've got 2 of them still inside here, and I guess the third one must be in another room, and we'll ask somebody whatever that is. You will then have 15 minutes for individual preparation. What does that mean? Take a look at, in those 15 minutes, quickly at the fact sheet. If patients can choose to die, shouldn't they also be able to choose to live? All of these objections start on page 4. All right? So you can read through page 4 through page 5. Okay? And then, after those 15 minutes, we'll go to another 15 minutes of one-on-one. In other words, you'll just pick out somebody who's right next to you. And this time, you're going to assume you've already done what you did this morning. You've already come in and given the basic initial spiel. You've made the argument about why the Family Health Care Decisions Act has to be either amended or opposed. Now, the job of your partner is to go from that green sheet and make objection 8, objection 9, objection 10, and objection 11. And then your job is to come back with a rebuttal. Okay? And then reverse. So your partner is, you're the senator and making those objections, and the partner comes back and with the correct answer. Then once again, we'll go to taping. I'll try to get half of you up there, preferably the ones who were to tape this morning. And your instructor will act like the senator, and there will be a back and forth. Yes, ma'am? Yes. Since you phrased it in terms of Catholicism, let me put it this way. If you look at any of the Pope's encyclicals on matters of public policy, you will notice that they are addressed not only to the faithful, but also to, quote, men of goodwill. And one of the fundamental points, speaking of it specifically from Catholicism, since you raised that point, is that it is the position of the Catholic Church that on matters of natural law, as opposed to matters of direct revelation, the fundamental principles of justice and equity are accessible to people based on logic alone. Now, the Church teaches that that logic is implanted by God. But what the Church says very directly and very clearly is that whether someone believes in God or not, it's still wrong to kill somebody. Whether one believes in God or not, whether one is a Catholic or not, it's still wrong to deny, to steal from someone. Okay? And when an argument is being made in the public forum, in a society where not everyone is Catholic, certainly, not everyone is Christian, not everyone is Jewish, people may be atheists or agnostics, we don't want to give them the out. We don't want to give them the out of being able to say, oh, well, that's just based upon, your particular religious sex position. Because the fact is that in the issues that we're talking about here, these are principles, these are issues that are accessible based upon logic, based upon reason, that don't require to start from a faith perspective. So, and I will make the point very clearly. Neither the New York State Right to Life Committee nor this seminar is just for Catholics. The pro-life movement is non-sectarian. And it appeals to people of goodwill, and yes, it appeals to people can oppose abortion and people can oppose euthanasia without having any faith in God at all. So what we are trying to do is acting within the civil arena to convince legislators, in this particular case, that they ought to allow people the choice of being allowed to choose life and to choose treatment. And the arguments that we're putting forward here, which are in no way contradictory to a faith-based perspective, are ones which are nevertheless accessible to and should be persuasive of people, whatever their situation is with regard to their religion or their lack of religion. Now, what I'd like to do, as I say, is to go through each of these points one by one and summarize them for you before we do our breaking up. I guess we are running a little late, so I'll try to make this as quick as I can.
First, we're going to have a question session here at all, because we seem to be going through as the questions come up, and I haven't found stuff and I know I don't want to derail you too much.
Sure. Let's do this. Is there a time when we actually have to leave this room? Could we stay till 4:30? Let's do this. Let's go ahead through the initial schedule, and then at 4 o'clock we will stay, and anyone who would like to stay to ask questions will certainly be very welcome to do that. Okay. All right. First objection is that you cannot, our basic argument, the argument we're trying to put forward is, look, this bill is supposedly respecting family decisions. That's what it's called, the Family Health Care Decisions Act. But it's one-sided. It really only respects those family decisions that are to deny treatment. Should it equally respect the decisions to choose treatment? Well, the objection to that is, wait a second. You can't compare the right to keep something from being done to you, a medical operation being performed on you, to a right to demand that somebody else do something for you, have the doctor provide you treatment. That's the first objection. It's a false comparison you're making. You right flag. Now, the response to that is, sure, there's a difference. But when someone has a duty of care, then one does have a duty to provide treatment. And by definition, in a physician-patient relationship, there is a duty of care by the physician for the patient. That's what malpractice laws are all about. The only way we're able to hold doctors liable in malpractice when they fail to do things they're supposed to do is because once there's a physician-patient relationship established, there is a duty to provide treatment and care. Okay. That leads to the next objection, number 9, which is, all right, maybe there's a duty of care under malpractice standards, but that duty is set by what other doctors say. If I'm claiming that I should have been given an x-ray and I wasn't, and I was harmed by that, I've got to put doctors on the stand in a malpractice case. Other doctors who say, hey, standard medical practice is to do x-rays in such and such a circumstance, and Dr. So-and-so was negligent in not doing it. But, the objection goes on, many doctors out there say, and medical associations say, that it's entirely appropriate for doctors to deny treatment to people whose quality of life they judge to be poor. So you can't use the malpractice analogy that you just used in responding to the first objection. What's our response to that? There is a difference between technical medical judgment, which indeed should be set by the physician. Under what circumstances is it the case that giving such and such treatment X is likely to result in ameliorating condition Y? We're not asking that patients be allowed to practice medicine and go in and dictate to doctors, you have to give me precisely this operation or precisely this drug. That's not what we're trying to do. But there's a difference between that sort of technical medical judgment and the value judgment the firefighters should be able to decide where to put up hoses, not the rector of St. Joseph Seminary. But the rector of St. Joseph Seminary, not the firefighters, should be able to decide, does the seminary burn down? Okay. It's not the job of the firefighter to say this building ought to burn down. And in the same way, of course, doctors shouldn't be making those value judgments. But that leads to objection number 10. And objection number 10 is that doctors aren't just technicians, they're professionals with a conscience. And they should, the law should protect them from being forced to provide treatment which those doctors think is unethical. Not merely technically inappropriate, but unethical, because it's going to keep alive somebody with a poor quality of life. Okay? And our point is, again, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Right now, there's a balance that's struck by the law between patient autonomy and doctor's conscience rights. If a doctor thinks that it's unethical to starve a patient to death when that patient requests that starvation, then what the law says is that the doctor can say, well, the patient has to be transferred. I won't be the one to starve the patient to death. We're saying the same should apply here. The doctor says that the patient I don't want to provide treatment to this patient because of their poor quality of life. Fine. But let the patient be transferred and just maintain the status quo. Provide the life-saving treatment until that transfer is complete. And now we get to the big dollar sign. Summarizing number 11. And that is, wait a second, you're saying that all these patients should be able to choose treatment whenever they want. What about the cost of all that? We can't afford that as a society. Again, we can debate whether rationing is necessary or not in the country that's the richest in the world. But even supposing it is necessary, granted, for the sake of argument only, that somehow it is unnecessary, clearly the only fair way to do it is on a society-wide basis, rather than giving each healthcare provider the opportunity to make differing, arbitrary, and subjective rationing decisions. And you can use the World War II analogy. We didn't give each butcher the ability to decide who gets beef. We had a rationing board that had rationing people. All right. It is now 1:40.